Hey everyone, you ever get that like nagging feeling that what if I totally wipe out feeling, that fear of failing?
Yeah.
It's something we all grapple with, but today we're going beyond the surface level advice.
Okay.
We're diving deep, really deep into the why, the how, and most importantly, how to flip this fear into a superpower.
I like it.
And get this, we'll be exploring the unexpected link between the fear of failure and, wait for it, the fear of success.
It's true. They often stem from the same root, the fear of the unknown.
Oh, interesting.
But instead of letting that fear paralyze us, what if we could decode it, understand its language, and ultimately use it to our advantage?
I love that, decoding the fear.
Yes.
So we've got a stack of research here that gets granular, and it is fascinating.
Okay.
For instance, did you know there are 5 core beliefs that fuel this fear?
Right. And some are surprisingly specific.
Okay.
It's not just the general, I might mess up, but deeper fears like upsetting important others or even devaluing my own self-worth if I don't succeed.
Those hit close to home.
Yeah.
The research points out that these often come from childhood. Think back to being a kid, terrified of disappointing a parent or teacher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If we were constantly criticized or held to impossible standards early on,
Right.
that fear of not being good enough can become ingrained. We learn it, we internalize it, and then bam, it follows us into adulthood, influencing our decisions without us even realizing it.
Like a subconscious script we're playing on repeat.
Totally.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The research talks about how fear of failure and fear of success actually share a common thread.
It's counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But think about it. Both involve a massive shift in our reality and who we think we are.
Okay.
Success, just like failure, throws us into the unknown.
Right.
New responsibilities, new expectations, a whole new identity to navigate.
Wow.
It can be terrifying, even if it's something we think we want.
So on one hand, we're terrified of falling flat on our face. But then, if we actually succeed, there's this whole new pressure to maintain that success, to live up to this new image.
Right.
Have you ever felt stuck between those two fears, like you're being pulled in both directions?
It's incredibly common. And to make matters worse, perfectionism often swoops in, acting as a turbocharger for both.
Perfectionism, that's a whole other beast. I mean, we're often told it's a good thing,
Right.
a sign of striving for excellence. But the research paints a different picture.
Yeah. It turns out perfectionism isn't really about striving for excellence. It's about avoiding failure at all costs. And that avoidance, that fear-driven need to be flawless, can be incredibly paralyzing.
It's like setting the bar so impossibly high that you are almost guaranteed to trip over it.
Right.
And then when you inevitably don't meet those impossible standards,
Yeah.
it just reinforces the fear, creating this vicious cycle.
Exactly. And to break free from that cycle, we need to shift our perspective. Instead of focusing on flawlessness, what if we focused on growth, on progress over perfection?
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Because it's easy to say, don't be a perfectionist.
Sure.
But in reality, those deeply ingrained thought patterns are tough to break.
One powerful approach is reframing. Instead of viewing failure as this big, scary monster, what if we looked at it as valuable data? Each setback, each failure is simply a data point that tells us something about our approach, our strategies, maybe even ourselves.
I love that. Reframing failure as data. It takes the sting out of it, right?
Yeah.
Because data is neutral. It's information we can use to adjust, to improve, to get closer to our goals. It takes the emotionality out of the equation.
Exactly. And when we can remove the emotional charge, we can approach those setbacks with more curiosity, more objectivity.
Right.
We can ask ourselves, okay, what did this experience teach me? What adjustments can I make moving forward?
So it's about becoming more of a scientist about our own lives.
Yes.
Experimenting, collecting data, and constantly iterating based on the feedback we receive.
Precisely. And that experimental mindset can be incredibly liberating because it takes the pressure off of being perfect and allows us to embrace the learning process even when it's messy.
And I think that's a really important point, especially when you consider how much pressure we face from, well, pretty much everywhere, because it's not just our own brains doing this to us, right? The research also talks about how society can actually amplify this whole fear of failure thing.
Absolutely. We live in a culture that often glorifies success and downplays or even demonizes failure.
Right. It's like we're bombarded with these highlight reels of people's lives, especially on social media.
Yes.
We see the awards, the book deals, the picture-perfect vacations. But we rarely see the hustle, the rejections, the times they completely face planted.
It creates this distorted view of what success actually entails. And it can make us feel like we're the only ones struggling, which just intensifies that fear of not measuring up. And it's not just social media. Think about the education system.
Yeah.
We're often judged solely on grades and test scores, creating this intense pressure to perform to be perfect.
It's like from day one, we're conditioned to see anything less than an A+ as a failure.
Right.
And that pressure, it doesn't just disappear when we graduate.
Not at all. It often seeps into our workplaces, our relationships,
Yeah.
even our personal creative endeavors. We're afraid to take risks, to put ourselves out there, because what if we fail?
And the irony is that this fear of failure can actually be a major roadblock to success. When we're so afraid of messing up, we hesitate to take risks, to innovate, to truly push ourselves beyond our comfort zones.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We avoid the very things that could lead to growth and fulfillment because we're so fixated on not messing up.
It makes you wonder how many brilliant ideas, how many life-changing innovations have been stifled by this fear. It's like we're collectively holding ourselves back.
And the research actually touches on this.
Oh.
There's this fascinating section about how different cultures view failure.
Okay.
And it really highlights how much of this is societal, not inherent.
Oh, tell me more about that. How do different cultures perceive failure?
Well, in some cultures, failure is seen as a collective experience,
Okay.
a shared opportunity for learning and growth.
Okay.
It's not about placing blame, but rather about understanding what went wrong and how to improve as a group.
That's so interesting. It's like a completely different paradigm. Failure as a community event, a chance to come together and problem solve.
Exactly. Whereas in other, more individualistic cultures, failure is often seen as a personal shortcoming, something to be ashamed of, something to hide. And that kind of stigma just amplifies the fear and prevents us from seeking support or learning from our mistakes.
It's almost like those cultures are missing out on a valuable opportunity for growth. Because let's be real, failure is inevitable. It happens to everyone, no matter how successful or put together they may seem.
Right. And it's in those moments of failure, those times when we stumble or fall short, that we have the opportunity to learn the most valuable lessons.
Which brings us to what I find incredibly inspiring. Those who've not just bounced back from failure, but used it as fuel to achieve remarkable things.
Absolutely. Understanding the psychology of fear is important, but seeing it in action, seeing how others have navigated those choppy waters,
Right.
can be incredibly empowering.
So let's dive into some inspiring failure turnarounds. Stories of resilience, perseverance, and the power of never, ever giving up.
Yes.
First up, J.K. Rowling. I mean, everyone knows Harry Potter, right?
Yeah, global phenomenon. But what most people don't know is that before she became a literary superstar,
Right.
J.K. Rowling was a single mother battling depression, facing rejection after rejection.
It's true. That first Harry Potter manuscript was rejected by 12, count 'em, 12 different publishers. Can you imagine pouring your heart and soul into something only to be told it's not good enough?
Wow. Yeah.
Not once, but 12 times.
It's a testament to her belief in her story, in her vision.
Right.
Imagine if she had given up after the first rejection or the fifth or even the 11th. The world would have been robbed of the magic of Harry Potter.
Talk about resilience. And it's not just J.K. Rowling. We've got Walt Disney, fired from his newspaper job and told he lacked imagination. His first animation company went bankrupt. Bankrupt.
Imagine the self-doubt he must have grappled with, the uncertainty about his future. But he persevered,
Yeah.
driven by that unwavering belief in his creative vision.
And what about Steve Jobs, the visionary behind Apple, ousted from his own company in 1985?
Oh.
It's almost unimaginable to pour your heart and soul into something only to be kicked out of it.
But his story is a powerful reminder that setbacks, even those that seem catastrophic,
Right.
are not the end. They can be the catalyst for even greater things.
And that's exactly what happened with Jobs. He went on to found NXT and Pixar,
Right.
which, hello, gave us Toy Story. And then he returned to Apple and led them to become the tech giant they are today.
These stories, they remind us that the path to success is rarely linear. It's often paved with setbacks, detours, and moments of profound uncertainty.
It's about embracing those challenges, learning from them, and using them as fuel to propel us forward. It's about shifting our perspective from "I failed" to "what can I learn from this?"
Because in every perceived failure, There's a seed of wisdom, a lesson waiting to be uncovered. It's about reframing those experiences, not as roadblocks, but as stepping stones on the path to something even greater than we initially imagined.
And sometimes the greatest lessons come from confronting not just the fear of failure, but also its more subtle counterpart,
Right.
the fear of success.
It sounds counterintuitive, right?
Yeah,
To be afraid of achieving what we think we want, but it's a very real phenomenon.
it really does. It
Yeah.
sounds crazy on the surface, right? Being afraid of success. But I think we've all had those moments, that little voice whispering, what if it's too much? What if I can't handle it?
It's that fear of the unknown again, just wearing a different mask. We get comfortable with a certain level of achievement, a certain identity. And the idea of that shifting, even for the better, can be unsettling.
Like, okay, I finally reached this goal, but now what? What if I can't maintain it? What if the expectations become overwhelming?
Exactly. And it often manifests in self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Procrastination, picking fights, setting unrealistic goals. It's like we're subconsciously trying to protect ourselves from the perceived dangers of success by ensuring we don't quite reach it.
So how do we break free from that fear, that self-sabotage cycle? How do we allow ourselves to want success, to embrace it fully?
Awareness is key. Start paying attention to those moments of resistance, those thoughts like, what if things change too much? Or, I'm not cut out for this.
Yeah.
Journal about them, talk them through with a trusted friend, bring them out into the open where they lose their power.
Shining a light on those fears, that's huge. And once we've identified them,
What then? How do we shift the narrative? Reframing is incredibly powerful here. Instead of focusing on what could go wrong, what if we consciously focused on what could go right?
Right.
Visualize yourself achieving those goals, feeling that sense of accomplishment, that fulfillment.
So it's about shifting from a fear-based mindset to one of possibility, of excitement. Because let's be real, fear and excitement often feel very similar in our bodies.
That's right.
It's that energy, that quick impulse. But it's the story we tell ourselves about that feeling that determines whether it holds us back or propels us forward.
I love that it's all about the story we choose to tell ourselves.
Yes.
And we have the power to rewrite that story, to choose courage over comfort, growth over stagnation.
It's like we're all on this grand adventure, and the path to our ultimate destination is rarely a straight line. There are going to be bumps, detours, maybe even a few wrong turns.
Yeah.
But it's those experiences, those moments of a perceived failure that make the journey so rich and rewarding.
Absolutely. And it's in those moments when we feel lost, uncertain, maybe even a little bit terrified, that we have the opportunity to discover our true strength, our resilience, our capacity for growth.
It's about learning to fail forward, to take those stumbles and turn them into lessons, to use them as fuel to propel us even further, to shift our perspective from, I failed, to, what can I learn from this?
And remember, you don't have to go it alone.
Yes.
Reach out to your support system, friends, family, mentors, even a therapist, anyone who can offer encouragement, perspective, and remind you of your own strength and resilience.
Because sometimes just knowing you've got people in your corner,
Yeah.
cheering you on every step of the way,
Yes.
that's all it takes to quiet those inner doubts and unleash your full potential.
So true.
So to wrap up this deep dive,
Yes.
here's a final thought for you. What if you decided to view failure not as the enemy, but as a guide?
What if those stumbles, those setbacks, were actually signposts, pointing you in the direction of your truest, most aligned path?
Embrace the unknown, my friend, and never ever be afraid to fail forward.
That's a wrap for today's deep dive.
Thank you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep asking those big, juicy questions.